Hello everybody, my name is Steven and welcome back to the Storytime channel. Without wasting any time, let's get into our stories of the day. Must find the reservation? Okay. Last week, me and my friend went out to eat for the first time in 3+ months. There was a short line before being seated, just one other couple before us. The man insisted that he had a reservation, but the waitress couldn't find his name in her tablet and immediately he got loud and angry. The waitress suggested that maybe the man had called the wrong number because there is another restaurant 50 kilometers from here with the same name and sometimes people mix up the two of them when doing a Google search. She was very polite and calm about it, but the man got even angrier and accused her of trying to shift the blame, said she couldn't do her job, blah blah. The waitress tried to say that they still had some open tables and if he could wait a moment she would go and check. But the man kept speaking loudly over her and saying that she must find his reservation. So eventually the waitress called the owner, and the owner took the man and his companion to one side so they wouldn't block the line while she tried to figure out what was going on. Now, me and my friend didn't have a reservation either because I'm a total scatterbrain and I forgot to call ahead. I told the waitress as much and asked if there was any chance they'd still be able to fit us in. She told me not to worry, there were still tables available and we were seated within a minute. Our table was not near the entrance so we didn't see what happened next, but the same waitress brought us our coffees at the end of dinner, so we asked her if everything was okay. Me and my friend had been talking about it and we were appalled at the man's behavior. The waitress told us not to worry, that the owner had let him stew for a bit, and then she'd called the other restaurant with the same name. The manager of that other restaurant had confirmed they had a reservation under his name. The man was very annoyed at being proved wrong and asked to be seated since they had been waiting a long time. The owner said that unfortunately, all tables were full. The man said, "But earlier you had empty tables, I saw it." The owner said, "Yes, but you told the staff you didn't want to be seated. You wanted us to find your reservation. We have found your reservation. It's for a restaurant in another city. In the meantime, other people have come in and all the tables are full. We have no seats left." The man didn't take it well, but the bartender, a huge giant of a man, was standing nearby so he scampered off in rage, swearing he was never coming back. I think everyone in that restaurant will be happy if he keeps that promise. If you just keep your cool, it would have worked out for you. Have you ever experienced somebody become a hothead and that made them miss out on something that they otherwise could have gotten if they were just calm? If so, let me know your story in the comments section down below. Demand we have a meeting for this? Okay. I once had a project manager named Shirley and a coworker named Alex. I was a computer programmer. Every morning we, along with half a dozen other people, had a 5-minute long meeting to discuss our progress and give people a chance to ask each other stuff. The boss was away on a 2-week vacation, and while he was away, the meetings were slightly more important so we could coordinate ourselves without him to do it. Right before the meeting, I had come to a roadblock because I couldn't remember what something in the programming was called. I just needed an actual word and I could continue, and I knew Alex would know it. At the meeting, Alex did his thing, a few other people talked, then it was my turn. I explained what I had done yesterday and what I was working on and said, "Hey Alex, do you remember?" At this point, Shirley interrupted and threw a screaming fit at me. How dare I try to have a discussion with someone without her? I pointed out that she was standing right there and she demanded to know how dare I try to talk to someone without it being a scheduled meeting in the conference room in her presence. I pointed out that this was a scheduled meeting, we were in the conference room, and we were in her presence. How dare I presume to ask anyone anything without notifying her in advance that I would be doing so? I tried to explain that it was only a very brief question, and she flipped out that how dare I try to talk back to her about this. So, having gotten an idea, I asked when we could have this meeting. She said 3 p.m. I knew darned well she had nothing to do before then, she just wanted to have something she could feel smug about. It was 9:34 a.m. at the time. She ordered that I do not discuss it with anyone before the meeting and I was not to proceed on the task without it or I'd be just proving it wasn't actually important and I was wasting anyone's time. The meeting ended and we left. Alex worked about 10 feet away from me so I could have just walked over and asked him, but I didn't. He sent me an instant message to know if I wanted to ask him whatever while she couldn't hear, and I replied that no, she wanted to be rude about it so she could reap the rewards of her actions. Alex and I had lunch every day, but I declined to talk about it. He knew I was up to something. At 3 p.m., he and I went into the conference room. 10 minutes later, she swanned in, closed the door, sat down, opened her notebook, uncapped her pen, wrote down the date and time and who was there, and told me I was now authorized to proceed. Hey Alex, do you remember last week when we did task, you used a thingy that did thing? What was it called? He told me. Great, thanks. And he and I both turned to leave. It had taken all of about 20 seconds. Shirley flew into a rage. I was deliberately making a mockery of her by scheduling a meeting for something that would take 20 seconds. As I left the room, I said, "Shirley, I warned you that this was a 1-minute exchange, but you insisted on a meeting." She didn't speak to me for the rest of the day. I made sure my timesheet reflected that I spent 9:35 to 3 p.m. doing nothing / waiting for Shirley. A day or two later, she flew into a rage at me again, and the entire staff was so enraged they told me they were quitting and asked me to join them. I asked them to wait a couple days, called my boss and told him, and on the next business day I found he had returned early from his vacation and fired her. To me, it sounds like this lady was just a toxic control freak and sounds like they were probably pretty unbearable to work with. How many bugs will your code have? I'll admit the compliance wasn't very malicious here, it was mainly just compliance. I'm a software developer. I write software. Our software testers test the software that I write. When they find a bug, they write a bug report and I fix the bug. Simple, right? Management likes to plan things and that's fine. They like to measure productivity, which is also fine, provided the measurement makes sense. They choose a measurement that doesn't make sense. They decided that during planning, developers need to estimate how many bugs there will be in our code. The measurement would be, if the tester found significantly fewer bugs than the estimate, then they must not be testing effectively. If they found significantly more bugs than the estimate, then we must be doing a bad job writing code. You can probably see the flaw here. A software developer strives to write code without bugs. We often don't succeed, but we try. While it's likely that a very complex system will have more bugs than a simple one, this is a broad approximation, and not the sort of thing you can use meaningfully to measure productivity. Since the software developers and software testers are all professionals who strive to produce a good product, we decided to comply in the laziest way possible. Everyone knew the estimated number of bugs from planning, so it was easy enough for the testers to see if they were going to go above or below that number. If they were finding a lot of bugs, they wouldn't write all of them and instead would talk to the developers directly. If they weren't finding enough bugs, they'd start nitpicking for the tiniest of things. And if that wasn't enough, the developers might accidentally check in new, easy-to-fix bugs while fixing other bugs. In this way, everyone met their numbers and management got to pretend they were doing something useful. It was stupid, but sometimes it's easier to comply with a stupid decision than it is to talk sense to the decision maker. Weirdly enough, this stupid decision has unexpectedly probably promoted a great amount of synergy going on here. Your wish is my command, boss. I used to work at a bakery for a lady who I am still friends with, although she used to occasionally become unreasonable and yell at her employees. You know that employee at your job who works super hard and isn't really recognized for it or paid well enough? You know, the sort of person who would rather do a task to get it done right even if it's someone else's job? Well, that person at the bakery was me. I was the opening supervisor, which just meant that I had to keep everyone on track until my boss got there at 6 or 7 a.m., and my coworker who was with me in the early mornings was not super good at her job to say the least. This resulted in me doing all of my work and roughly 30% of her work. I had told my boss this, but she had not addressed my coworker yet, and one busy day we were slammed. I mean, we usually made 2 or 3 dozen cinnamon rolls a day, but this day we made 24 and sold them all. As a result, we were behind with several tasks despite our best efforts. When my boss came in, she ripped into us about not getting everything done. I tried to explain how busy we had been, but she interrupted me and said, "If everyone would just do their jobs, it would be fine." "Oh, you think so? Very well, boss. Your wish is my command." The next insanely busy day, I bustled around doing my job, just my job. All the things my less competent coworker was struggling with, I let her figure out, and when our boss got in, she was furious. I calmly went about my work while she dumbfoundedly pitched in and tried to do damage control. She was pitching quietly to her daughter about the state of everything and why I didn't do more when her daughter, bless her, said, "Mom, OP actually did all of her tasks. It's coworker who struggled today," and my boss eventually conceded that perhaps more training was in order. Thanks for reading. Unfortunately, as painful as it is to see, you might need to just let the coworkers sink or swim on their own and let the situation resolve itself. Otherwise, you find yourself in the situation where you're doing way more work than you need to, and who really deserves to do that when you're not recognized for it? Company policy cost company a lot. In 1979, my dad's company transferred him to Mexico City from Toronto. We flew down in early December and moved into a hotel. Good hotel in the city. Our furniture was supposed to arrive in a week or so, and then we would move into the house that the company was renting for us. It did. Except we found out that it was going to be stuck in customs for an indeterminate amount of time. My dad asked his company if they would let him expense some basic living gear for the house. Cookware, plates, a few beds, just enough to get us out of the hotel and into the house. The company said no. Policy was that we were to be in a hotel until the furniture arrived, not to buy us furniture or housewares. My dad noted that the policy didn't say what hotel we had to stay in. So we moved out of the individual rooms of the hotel we were in and moved into one of the presidential suites at a 5-star hotel, Hotel Camino Rio. We had 2 floors and a private swimming pool. The hotel put a Christmas tree in our living room. In 1979, the suite was around $400 a day. I have no idea what it is in today's money. We ate out at really nice restaurants. We got tired of steak and lobster. In all, we were in the hotel for 39 days before we got our belongings out of customs. The hotel bill was somewhere around $14,000. My dad said they changed the policy after that. Inflation calculator says $400 in 1979 is equivalent to just over $1,400 in 2020. So $14,000 in 1979 is equivalent to almost $49,500 in 2020. Ouch. Reason required to move out. This happened a long time ago. I was young and had just come back from traveling in Europe. I wound up renting an apartment that I was not happy with, but it was in my hometown and was affordable. I was hoping to move out and was able to do so once a better opportunity came along. The apartment was generally depressing, so I was looking forward to moving out. I talked to the landlord and building manager about moving out and to see if I could move out mid-month to save on some rent. They said that was not possible and I would have to wait until the end of the month to move out. Fine, not a big problem. The building manager says I need to fill out some forms before I can move out. So I go to his office and do so. He was not a very friendly guy, but honestly I had not had any interactions with him prior to this and had no hard feelings about him. One of the questions on the form was, "Why are you moving out?" I left it blank. What business is it of anyone's why I'm moving out? The building manager handed me back the form and said, "You have to fill this in." I told him that I didn't feel like giving a reason that I am moving out, and didn't understand why it was mandatory. He insisted that I had to fill it in or he would not process my move-out paperwork to the end of the month-to-month lease. I said, okay, fine, and I filled in, "I do not like the building manager." He was shocked when he read it. I told him I didn't want to put anything down, but rules are rules. I guess the question is trying to figure out some kind of feedback, but if you don't want to fill it out, you shouldn't be obligated to. And people who would fill it out most of the time would probably say, "Because I'm moving elsewhere," and not really give anything constructive. Foreman in the way. About 5 years ago, I was working as an assembler in a cabinet shop. I would take parts cut on a CNC and put them together for shipping. Occasionally, there would be questions as to how those parts were intended to fit, or there was an error with the part itself. No problem, the designers were through a door 10 feet away from my workstation, and I could ask a quick question and be back to work within a few minutes. My shop foreman, however, wanted all information to flow through him. On paper, this seems reasonable as he just wanted to know exactly what was happening on the shop floor. Practically, it was a dumb idea. If an issue occurred, I would have to go hunt him down and wait if he was busy. Then I would have to explain the issue. If it was a design conflict, I would have to run through 5 to 10 minutes of explanation just so he'd understand what was wrong, then another 5 explaining what I needed him to ask the designers. Usually I would just circumvent him and just ask my question, but I was eventually reprimanded. Cue the malicious compliance. If I had an issue, I'd immediately note the time on my time card and go looking for the foreman, run through the whole shebang, and then sit down on my bench and wait. I would do absolutely nothing while waiting for him to try and translate my issue and then understand the explanation. He would come back, irritated, and ask why I'm sitting around, and I'd just say, well, I needed that question answered before I could move on. I didn't want to clear my workstation off just to spend 5 minutes on something else. That would be a waste of time. Once I was back on track, I'd fill in the downtime on my time card. FYI, employers don't like seeing chunks of a workday allotted to waiting for an answer. This is especially true when the majority of the answers he came back with made no sense, and he'd send me forward to ask myself anyways. In the end, they just asked us to keep him in the loop after getting our issues sorted and to deal with the asking ourselves. I get the purpose, but obviously yes, it's just not good execution. But with that being said, that's all the stories we have for today. So what I want to know is, which of these stories was your personal favorite and why? Let me know which story was your personal favorite in the comments section down below. And thank you all so very much for watching and listening to the Storytime channel. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing and don't forget to turn notifications on so you'll never miss an upcoming video from the Storytime channel. Thank you all again for watching and listening to today's stories on the Storytime channel.